Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Season 1, Episode 3. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I love how this episode plays into, hey, they're in the honeymoon phase. So obviously there's an undetermined amount of time. I'm curious, this was a question I had last episode, because the first episode was the first date, second date, this is the first vacation. So it's like obviously a lot of like the relationship stuff, obviously put in a very like hyperbolized situation, obviously in the nature of what the show is, but I'm curious, are there missions in between? Because it didn't seem like that, because she dropped, once again, those turquoise balls or whatever, like she dropped two of them in like a jar, so kind of implying like maybe it was like their second mission. So we don't know how much, I mean, we also don't know like how much, I brought up last episode, maybe it's like been a couple days, maybe weeks in between their missions. It's not like they're getting missions back, boom to boom, boom, boom. It might just be like, yeah, it might be a couple days to decompress and figure out the next mission and set everything up. You know, might take some time to kind of set up all that. So it might be a couple days, might be a couple weeks. So there might be like time frames. So we have no idea how long it's been since the second episode. But to say, hey, it's their first international job. They're kind of going on vacation, and like I say, they're in the honeymoon phase. They're really into each other. Their relationship has progressed. It started with sex, and it's kind of grown there, and they're like having sex a lot and just having fun and being cute. Like, to the fact is that like they're supposed to be watching a couple played by I was about to call her Sharon. No, it is her. The actress's name is Sharon. She plays the character's name is Gaval, but she's played by Sharon Horgan. And the husband's Parker, and he's played by Billy Campbell. Well, I think it's interesting, just Amazon connection-wise, Sharon Horgan was one of the leads in this kind of dark, I don't know if it's even considered a dark comedy, but it's like a romance comedy called Catastrophe. And it's interesting, and I wonder, was that on purpose getting her involved in it? It's just because, yeah, I mean, she's fantastic regardless. She's a very, very funny actress. I don't know if I feel like she might be a stand-up comedian, but she might not be. She might just be a comedian actress. I'm not well versed enough to know, but I'm wondering, it just feels like that could have been on purpose, of just kind of almost drawing parallels to Catastrophe, just because it's kind of a similar nature of like, it's been a while since I saw Catastrophe, but I believe the general premise was like it was a drunk hookup. She gets pregnant and they kind of have to stay together, and it's kind of this mash of like this put together relationship, kind of similar to Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So that's why I'm wondering if there's supposed to be a parallel. That's why I'm like, am I reading way too much into that? Strong possibility. It's been a hot minute since I've seen Catastrophe, so I could be misremembering like at least the early stages. I remember they just kind of got together. It was just kind of like, yeah, we're gonna figure this out. I want to say it's because she got pregnant. I could be mistaken, but I want to say it was because she got pregnant. But either way, it just felt like an interesting parallel to kind of draw. And so, right, they're having relationship issues. She's working all the time. He's having issues. It's like, do you really need to be working? And here they are in their honeymoon phase, commenting on a couple who's kind of been through the ringer. They've been together for a little while. And so it's like, oh, like, hopefully we never end up like that. But there's obviously some disagreements because, like, Jane takes Gaval's side in some of the arguments, whereas like John takes Parker's side of arguments, which I do think it's interesting later on. Despite that, they follow the other. So later on, John is following Gaval, whereas Jane is following Parker. But I'm wondering, is that switcheroo supposed to be like it's a little easier that way, or I mean, it was just kind of a spur of the moment thing of like, I need to get away from you, Stefan. I'm gonna follow Gaval, who's walking away, so it's just easier. I don't know. It's just like, once again, there's little things there. You're like, it feels like not like I don't. From the show perspective, it's obviously done on purpose, but in the context of these characters, did they mean to do that on purpose or not? It's kind of like the thing I'm questioning and wondering about. But either way, because despite them kind of having agreements with like, okay, John kind of leans more towards Parker, Jane ended up leaning more towards Gaval. Despite that, the person they ended up following ended up being the person that they ended up connecting with the most on just what they were going through. So that's what I'm like, I don't know if it just happened. I think for the character's sake, they weren't thinking about it, and it just happened, and you ended up finding a deeper connection than you thought you would, despite it being the person you disagree with, which is kind of I think maybe a deeper relationship, beautiful thing of like, oh yeah, here's a person you kind of disagree with, but there's like, you still end up finding some common ground because like you're never going to agree with everything, but things you're going to like. That's what I'm like I said, I'm spouting off of this stuff that like I just feel like I'm reading way too much into it. But getting back to it, like I said, John wants to kind of go out. It's like, oh, we're in this beautiful vacation. We can bring the baby monitor. We can keep tabs on them because they're probably not really going to go anywhere. And it's like, but Jane wants to stay inside. It's like, oh, I just want to stay here and be with you. He's like, oh, okay. And so he kind of signs off on that. He's fine with that. But I love that in the middle of the night because they've never actually slept in the same bed together because they've stayed in separate rooms. Once again, it's still that early phase, that honeymoon phase of like we haven't really fully committed to this. We're establishing like, yeah, this is a relationship and we were kind of put together, but we're finding our footing. But we still haven't really fully, I think, established what this relationship is. I think this is the episode that really does that. But when it's all said and done, I love like she farts. At first I was like super unclear. I'm like, who actually farted? And she went to the window. She's like, what was that? He's like, I'll go check it out. She's like, okay. And then she goes to the window and she waits till he's not nearby. And she's like, you see her with the gun in her hand, like fanning it. I'm like, oh, you farted. I love that. Because like, I think typically you'd probably think, I don't, you know, and maybe this is me making some generalization. I would feel like it usually would be on the other foot. You'd be like, oh yeah, the guy's farting and too embarrassed to do that. But then there's also a part of me that's like, yeah, but guys were gross. So it feels like it'd be like fine if a guy fart. Because I think typically that scene will play out where a guy farts and then like he's so nonchalant about it, who cares? But it's like, but I think it's also like playing into that generalization, like, you know, like, oh, you kind of hide stuff away in the early parts of a relationship. You don't fart around each other. You don't poop around each other. It's like, yeah, that's why we're two separate bathrooms, like, type of situations. And some people, and it works for some people where it's like, yeah, I choose to let her have her own bathroom. I have my own bathroom. So when I need to poop, I go downstairs and poop. So, like, we, you know, don't break the illusion of the sexiness of it. You know, it's something kind of like that. And she immediately, they lay back down and she's just staring. You could tell she couldn't really go back to sleep easily because she's like, does he know? Because she's even taking the cover and trying to like fan it a little bit. Like, please don't let him find out. Okay, good. He doesn't know. When she wakes up, he's already like out at breakfast because he had gone to the gym. And I love it. Once again, it's just like that honeymoon phase is starting to crack because now they're starting, whereas like the couple they're following is arguing. They themselves start arguing, once again, because they have their disagreements on whose side they choose on this relationship, which is kind of funny when it comes to the whole like, oh yeah, you're like surveilling this couple, but you kind of start taking a little bit of a stance in the whole grand scheme of things. But I also think it's so interesting that like, once again, like she's talking with her mouth full and he's like, oh god, and he starts mimicking her. And it's like, yeah, he's like, no, you do this. And he's like, eating with his mouth closed. And she's like, oh, like, do you do that? He's like, yeah, I do that. And he starts getting this, like, messages on the phone. He's like, spam. I'm like, it's not spam. I was like, it's your mom, isn't it? I was like, interesting. I was like, it's gonna come up again. But, like, the way he was acting, it's like, no, it was something, not just spam. It was something else. But once again, just playing into their personalities where John, it's like this nearby couple he's overhearing. They've been together for like 50 years. And he's like, oh, God, beautiful scarf. He's like, oh, be careful. I was about to take it from you. It's like joking with them. And damn it, I keep doing that. Jane, I just want to keep calling Maya by her actual name instead of the character's name. But Jane is kind of like, oh no, we have to go. And it's so interesting because it's like, I think there's always going to be those like couples where like one is going to be way more sociable than the other. And once again, we've already seen that dynamic where he's like, oh, I want to know more about you. But she's the one that's kind of like, I'm going to go a little skimpy on the details. So for him to be like all friendly and stuff like that, but she's like, the fact of the matter is that's why we go on vacation. You go on vacation to get away from friends, not to make more friends. And so it's like, oh, these are our vacation friends, which she kind of shot that in the foot later when she was like, they were chasing after the couple and he's trying to be cordial, but hey, we have to go. They want to talk because he was too friendly with them. And now they're like, hey, another young couple. Hey, let's talk. We should get together. And she's like, shut up, shut the fuck up. I have a gun and I will shoot you. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Jake. He's like, I have a gun? It's like, that's some wild shit to say to somebody. It's like, wow, not only did we lose the couple, we also lost our vacation friends. That was so sad. It's like, oh, because I love the beautiful parallels of like, hey, here's this couple that's fighting, and here's a couple that's been together for a while. They're so in love. They're so endearing. They're a sweet older couple too. So it's like, it's really sweet, and that's such a bummer. It's like, that is such a bummer, dude. Also, like, they go to the ski lift, and it's like, okay, so yeah, I don't know how to ski. It's like, what do you mean? You picked up the equipment. He was like, yeah, just because I wanted to look fashionable. And she starts laughing. She's like, you're joking, right? He was like, I would never joke about fashion. I love that. And, he ends up talking to his mom. It's the classic, we've all been there. Did you try turning it off and back on? Okay, you need to go to settings, put in this particular password. Was it Wally Golly 0401? 0401. It's just like, okay, I don't know what it. I will help you with it later, or I'll call the company about it. And it's like, who was that? Was that your mom? It's like, yeah. And he kind of, it's a very serious moment where it's like, yeah, my mom needs me. Like I said, because he specifically said that line of in the first episode. Oh, even my mom, like, that wasn't going to be the easiest thing. Because even I was like, you're really going to end up ghosting your mom. You're just going to disappear. So he keeps it vague. So it's like, she doesn't know, but he's like, right, I'm going to be working a lot. Like, he came up with an excuse. I'm going to be working a lot, not going to be in the country a lot. Says, like, he's married. So he told her enough to kind of, but that's the problem. By telling your mom the truth, she's always going to be like, so when you going to pop me out some grandbabies? When am I going to meet this wife of yours? When am I going to meet my grandchildren? That's the complicated problem with that too, which, Jane, gets on his case about, because it is like, it's not only us, because she doesn't call you by your fake name, John. She calls you by your real name. It can compromise this whole mission, everything that we're doing, the secrecy of it, but also not even just that. You are putting your mom in danger, because what if the company we work for finds out, if they don't already know? That could be an issue. And that's also like the whole point of this thing is like, by putting your past behind you, that way no one can come follow. It's also like, I think it's not the same. I was about to say, like, I'm good on John for not digging a ditch, for digging a grave for himself by trying to say like, well, you're a hypocrite, you kept your cat. He knows that that'd be a stupid argument to make. Keeping a cat is different from keeping in contact with your mom. It's a very, very different situation. So, yes, there's a little hypocrisy there, but it's also like, that's not the argument you want to make, because it's not a strong argument. It's an argument that can be made. It's stupid for you to try and make the argument, but you can make it. There's validness to it to the smallest, minute degree, but not on the grand scheme of things, because you're going to lose that argument. So it's good on John for not even going, because if it's probably anyone else, someone else would have probably been stupid enough to take the bait to be like, oh, but you kept your. Good on you for not going down that route. So, once again, it's just like, I see both sides to it, because it's like, my mom, she needs me. He doesn't really go into it, like whether she's sick or not, but it's just like, right, she has no one else in her life, so I'm kind of all she has. I can't just up and ditch her, like, well, what about you and your dad? And she's like, no, I'm fine, I haven't talked to my dad. He's like, wait, you haven't? And she's like, don't judge me. He's like, no, I'm not judging you. It's just, for him, it's like, he can't imagine, like, okay, you don't talk to your dad, that's weird. He's like, we don't know enough about each other for you to kind of like make some assessment about me in that regard. He's like, what if my dad molested me? And he's like, oh wow, I'm sorry. I was like, no, she didn't say he did, but what if? She's like, no, my dad didn't. He's like, wait, what? Why would you use that to be your first example? And she's like, you're getting off the fucking point. But it's like, yeah, like I could tell by the way she said, she literally said, if my dad molested me, that's a whole different beat. But it's like her saying specifically, if, it's kind of like, no, she's just like, the point of the matter is, you don't know what my situation is with my dad. Once again, we saw from the conversation in episode 1, she was like, oh, I have to not talk to my dad again. Ooh, where do I sign? There's a lot of deep stuff there we don't know enough about. But like, well, we know his dad died. We don't know about her mom. So, is our mom still in the picture? Did she leave? Did she pass away? Is it like, are they both in a situation where they're only single parents? I think it's interesting too, because he had made reference to, like single kids or whatever, like only children, which I'm like, at first when he had that response, I was like, wait, do you have siblings? I mean, obviously I know Donald Glover in real life has a brother. I don't know if he has other siblings, because I know his brothers are like a writer. Like, in fact, his brother's his writing partner a lot of times, because his brother's also like an executive producer on the show. But either way, I'm going on to tangents. But when he had made that remark, I was like, aren't you also? Because we haven't heard anything about no siblings. Plus, you said your mom's only has you. So that's why I was like, no. So, because he had made some comment about like only children be like only child behavior that people have or something like that. But yeah. So they go skiing. He wipes out hard. And he's just frustrated. He's like, oh yeah, rich white people doing some stupid shit like this. So And it's just kind of this sad back and forth, especially because like right there, that feels like such a real couple argument that Parker and Gaval had, where she was like, no, I told you I wasn't going to work the whole day. He was like, yeah, you said that. She's like, no, I said I wasn't going to work the whole day. But he's like, no, I thought you meant you weren't going to work the whole day. He's like, you didn't listen to me. It's like, well, and even John was like, well, we have the recording. Should we hand it to him? Because, like I said, the lines in the sand were drawn and they're both picking sides in this. And it's like, it is, to me, that's not like oh, you chose to mishear me. It's like, no, like that statement, that's such an easy statement to be misinterpreted. That statement is so vague enough that you could misinterpret it. When I initially, and maybe it all comes down to perspective, because I agree with Parker and John. I understood it as I won't work the whole day, as in the entire day I won't work. It would just be family time. But I didn't even think to interpret it as, oh, I'm just not going to work the whole day. I work some of the day. But it's like, that's language too. Like, there's so many holes where things can be misinterpreted. It's a thing where and once again, that speaks volumes that it's easy for me to be like, oh, I never interpreted it as, I would have been like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you meant that. I didn't realize you meant that way. I would, that's a conversation to have, but they're already in such a rocky place. They're not even willing to have that. Oh, I'm sorry, babe, I misinterpreted it. I legitimately thought, but it kind of turned into an even further argument, being like, no, I was right. I wish I had a recording so I can prove to you how wrong, because you said it this way. She's like, no, I said it this way. To me, you have to, depending on how you, the inflections on certain words can change the whole meaning of that conversation. So it's just that it's so interesting. Like I said, that feels like such a real argument to be had over like what is essentially kind of semantics. Very big semantics in the grand scheme of things, but semantics regardless. So, like, I love that she's like, oh, like, do you not, you like me being cold and distant? She's like, fine, I could go back to being cold and distant. She puts on the shades. He's like, oh, I could be cool too. And he puts on like a beanie cap and just kind of leans back. It's like, fine, I'm going to follow her. She's going off on her own. And Jane follows the husband. And just the interesting moments that they have together. Because she's even like, oh, are you trying to flirt with me? He was like, if I was doing... Obviously, if you think I am, that means I'm not doing a really good job at it. But she's like, are you trying to flirt with me or fix my marriage? Because, and the other side of things with Jane and Parker was it's just so interesting, because from her perspective in things, it's just like she just needed time away from him. It's just, she loves him at one point in time, but it's just like, especially because he's the one that kind of threw out the whole, oh, like, do you think we should get a divorce? And she's like, why would you even say that right now? Because he's like, I don't think we should be married. And it's just like, right, that's on your mind. That already, like, the fact that you're even thinking that or feeling that is already, like, a red flag. Because from his perspective, it's like, I was a surfer, I was pro surfer, and there she was beaming on the beach, beautiful, amazing, and then, like, we did a lot of fucking, and it just seems like they just can't find their way forward, and it just... Now he's got everything with his son, and it's like, oh, Jane made the point of like, oh yeah, kids can be content, which I'm like, is she pulling from her own personal life when she's kind of making that conversation piece? And for him, it's like, yeah, you can be content, but that doesn't necessarily translate to happy, which I'm like, part of me wonders is like, when she's talking about being content, is that like, it feels like obviously she's talking a little bit about her and John, where she's kind of, I think, to some extent content, or maybe she feels like John is content, and like, because she is trying to open up more and stuff, but like, because she's content with things kind of being the way they are rather than kind of going forward. But I'm also wondering, could that kind of come from her personal life too, of like her dad? Like, could her dad have been content with life, and maybe that's because there was a conversation that came up last episode I forgot to talk about, where John was like, oh, I took this job because of the money. Why did you? And she's like, yeah, the same. It's like, no, she had other reasons for taking this job. Because she enjoys the work, I don't know, but she took it for other reasons. It wasn't just about the money. They kind of made it clear that it was mainly the reason why John took it, but not necessarily with Jane. But maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but it felt like she would just go like, yeah, that's definitely the reason why I took this job, John. when she first started actually feeling sick, part of me was like, you don't think she's pregnant, do you? I was like, well, she was just knocking back some alcohol. That's not good. But it's like, she's been through it before, so she probably would have been like, oh, this feels like pregnancy sick. So she didn't. But I was wondering if that was going to be the case. It doesn't seem like it is, but yeah, just to be a d-bag, John has turned off his tracking off in his phone, and they both ended up bugging the phone, so both the respective phones, and so he's hearing her get kidnapped. The call ends up happening, and Parker says no to the deal, because it's like, the fact is, I'm like, I was like, there's no way he's actually going to say no. And he says no, and you even hear in the background, like, wait, he said no? Did he just say no? It's like, that's fucked, dude. That's super fucked. And it's like, he was looking towards his son, and I guess he was trying to debate, like, am I really going to be okay with my wife dying and, like, my son missing out on being with his mom? And it's just, because for him, his biggest concern is his son, and it's just, Jane helped him, being like, oh, your son loves this game, like, now you love it too. It's their way to kind of connect with your kid. So it ends up being a situation of, all right, they got the phone call. That was just supposed to be their job, was to record this phone call. But John decides, like, no, I'm going to intervene. And she's like, don't do it. It's not part of our mission. And he does, splatters some dudes, tells her to run. He kind of gets into like a scuffle, because I think he probably like ran out of ammo, so it turned into a close quarter combat situation, which he's decent enough at. And I love that the entire time Jane is texting him like, oh my god, like, you better be shot or dead because you're ignoring me. She's like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I'm not, I hope you're not shot or dead. And then later on she's just like, I know, I just think it's reckless. You obviously saying your mom's the only person you have, like, what would she think? Like, you were talking about we needed to communicate better, and this is a big mistake, and then she's apologizing again. I love that she's doing all this in text form because she can't get through to him on the phone, but he turned on his location, and luckily she found him and took him back. So just took him back to the motel because he was like suffering from freezing because of everything. So being out there in the cold for so long. So now they're back in the room just like the other couple, and Parker's like, oh my god, I'm glad you're alive. She's like, you let me, you were going to say, you say no? He was like, well, no. I mean, he's like, well, yes, I said no, but it's like, yeah, we made that agreement. She's like, I know we made that agreement, but still, it's like, that's the catch-22 of it. Not catch-22 of it. It is that thing of, oh, you can make all these promises ahead of time in a relationship, but then, like, when it actually gets to that point, you're like, what the fuck? It's like, no, you can't say what the fuck. We made this agreement that this is going to be the case. I know we did, but still, what the fuck? So kind of a similar thing for Jane and John, because, I mean, last episode, oh, let's not have sex. We had sex. Let's not end up like that couple. We end up exactly like that couple, so... But I love the whole thing of, like, he's just like, oh, she's trying to help him feel his fingers, and he's like, I can't feel my penis. She's like, what? You can't what? My penis, I can't feel it. She's like, okay. She started I was like, is he fucking with her? And he's just like, she's like, okay, do you feel that? And he's like, maybe if you put your mouth on it. She's like, asshole. He's like, I'm hurt. I just started, like, it just started to hurt, so, like, I fucking with you a little bit, but yes. And then just like this, like, once again, these little real moments where they have where she's like, I really care about you. Like, I really, really care about you. Because he was like, oh, you were concerned about me. She's also like, also, you're going to get a whole bunch of text messages from me. Just ignore those. I was mad. It's like, there's something really cute. I really like Donald and Maya together. Like, they play off each other so well. They bring, like, such a, like, awkward, but also there's awkwardness, obviously, but there's such a sweet sincerity to their relationship, too, that I think the two of them do a really good job of displaying on camera. But at the same time, they're making up, so is the other couple, Gaval and Parker. And it's like, oh, it took me almost getting killed for you to be like, you love me? It's like, yeah. And they make up. I was like, oh, every relationship there's similarities, but every relationship and dynamic is different and complicated. So, then on the train ride back, he's like, wow, that's, first you're threatening me, then you're threatening an old lady. She's like, just delete the messages. I was mad. He's like, oh, do you want to, sleep in the same bed, same room when we get back? She's like, is that what you want? He's like, well, if I didn't want it, I wouldn't have suggested it. It's like, okay, cool. I was like, the entire time I was like, please, please bring up the farting thing. Please, 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 please bring it back up. Make it so that like he actually did know. And she's like, oh, I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna go get a snack. He's like, if you want to, you could just let it go. She's like, what are you talking about? It's like, go ahead and fart. She's like, I don't have to fart. I know you farted the other night. I just went along with it. I'm like, yes! I'm so glad we fought that around. It's like, yeah, I'm not stupid. I figured you were embarrassed about it, so I just went along with the whole thing of you being like, oh, what was that? Yeah, let me... That's actually, once again, that's really sweet, and I love it. And she's like, fine, I don't have to fart, and I didn't fart the other night. Fine, I'm just not gonna like go get some food or whatever. And he's like, are you farting right now? She's like, no, I'm not. And I was like, is she actually? And he's like, oh my gosh. She's like, no, stop. It's not that bad. And he's like, go ahead and hit me so my body can be distracted from this. I was like, silent but deadly. Once again, it's just little moments like that. And I think that is the relationship in a whole. My personal perspective. I don't want to speak in generality and speak for other people, but it's like the little things you focus on. It's like that's, to me, that's love, man. It's like the little moments as they compile. It's like the little moments of the moments you cherish the most, and like that, to me, like displaying that makes it a really cute relationship and dynamic that I'm really loving to see this progression of their relationship and the ups, the highs and the lows. So I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us going with all of this. I wonder, was this considered a mission success? They were supposed to just record the conversation, which they did. So John did kill the people, so I don't know if that's going to technically count as a fail. You did decide a mission. There was no whole like, oh no, casualties thing. You did. I wonder, did the organization they worked for set that up? Like, why was she kidnapped? Well, they wanted him off the board of something. They wanted him to give up his like 51% share or whatever, but it was like the board's never going to agree to that. It's like, well, you better make it happen. So I mean, those were probably just like the lackeys, so who knows who they work for. So maybe those were your fellow employees that work for the same company or group that John and Jane do. Who knows? Just, it's very episodical, but because at the heart of it, it is just about their relationship, and it's just kind of these wacky adventures, that these one-off things that are just how it affects and influences their relationship. So I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.